Most traders spend years believing they have a strategy problem. They jump from one system to another, changing indicators, watching more videos, and searching for that one thing that will finally stop the losses. But after watching men win fortunes and lose them just as quickly, I can tell you something uncomfortable. Most traders are not failing because they enter trades poorly. They are failing because they do not understand risk. You believe confidence will protect you. You believe one good trade will recover every mistake. That kind of thinking has emptied more pockets than bad market timing ever has. The market has no sympathy for hope. It rewards patience, discipline, and the man who knows when to step aside. If you continue risking money without protecting yourself first, the market will teach you a lesson, and I assure you, it will not be a cheap one. And when that lesson arrives, most people do not even recognize it for what it is. They think the problem was bad luck. They blame timing. They blame the market, the news, or someone else's advice. Rarely does a trader sit quietly and ask himself the difficult question: what part of this loss did I create myself? I have watched many men step into the market with excitement in their eyes, only to leave frustrated and confused, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they carried dangerous habits without knowing it. One of the biggest mistakes a trader makes is believing every trade deserves a large amount of trust. He becomes too certain too quickly. He sees one good setup and suddenly begins imagining profits before anything has even happened. The truth is, certainty has ruined more traders than confusion ever has. A man wins a few trades and begins to feel clever. He starts believing he has finally figured things out. Slowly, caution disappears. He puts in more money than he normally would. He stops thinking carefully. He becomes impatient. Instead of waiting, he forces decisions because confidence whispers dangerous ideas into his mind. This one cannot fail. Yet the market has a strange way of humbling people who begin to feel untouchable. Then comes the opposite problem: fear after losses. Traders often change completely. They hesitate, they doubt themselves, or worse, they begin chasing what they lost. They enter poor trades hoping one lucky moment will repair the damage, but desperation is a poor guide. When decisions come from frustration, losses usually grow larger. What pains me most is seeing traders refuse small defeats because their pride gets involved. They tell themselves the trade will come back. They wait another hour, another day, hoping things will turn around. Hope becomes their plan. But hope has never protected a man's money. The strongest traders I have known were not the ones who avoided mistakes. They were simply men who respected danger. They understood that losing sometimes is part of the game, but losing control is what destroys people. If a trader cannot be honest with himself about his own bad habits, he will repeat them until they become expensive. The market notices carelessness. It notices impatience, and eventually it sends the bill to every man who refuses to learn. And when that bill finally arrives, a man has two choices. He can blame the world around him, or he can admit that the lessons was trying to teach him something all along. I learned this in ways that cost me more than money. Experience has a habit of teaching hard lessons to those who believe they no longer need teaching. There were times when success came to me so easily that I began trusting my own judgment too much. A few good decisions can quietly turn confidence into carelessness without a man noticing. You begin to feel sharper than everyone else. You believe you can see what others cannot. That feeling is dangerous because it slowly convinces you that rules are for weaker men. I remember periods when everything seemed to go my way. The profits came quickly, and with success came a strange sense of certainty. Instead of respecting the market, I started expecting it to agree with me. That expectation is where many mistakes begin. The market has a way of reminding a man that no one stays bigger than reality for long. There were moments when I held on to decisions longer than I should have, not because they still made sense, but because I did not want to admit I was wrong. Pride is quiet at first. It speaks gently. It tells you to wait a little longer, to trust yourself a little more. Yet the longer a man argues with reality, the more expensive that argument becomes. What many people do not understand is that painful moments often become your greatest teachers. Success can make you comfortable, but mistakes force honesty. They make you look at yourself without excuses. They ask uncomfortable questions. Were you patient? Were you careful? Or were you simply chasing excitement? I have seen talented people disappear because they believed talent alone was enough. Intelligence means little when emotions begin making decisions. The calm man usually survives longer than the clever one who acts without control. With time, I began understanding something important. Survival matters more than pride. You do not need to prove yourself every day. You do not need to force outcomes. Sometimes the smartest thing a person can do is accept discomfort early instead of allowing it to grow into regret. A man who learns from painful mistakes becomes wiser. A man who refuses to learn eventually repeats the same story until there is nothing left to lose. And sadly, most people do repeat the same story. Not because they are foolish, but because they never stop long enough to understand what keeps pulling them back into the same painful cycle. They believe the next opportunity will somehow fix everything, when in truth, the real struggle has very little to do with opportunity and far more to do with themselves. Many traders lose because they are always in a hurry. They feel pressure to constantly do something, as if sitting still means falling behind. The quiet moments feel uncomfortable to them. Waiting feels unproductive, so instead of being patient, they force decisions simply to feel involved. Yet, impatience has emptied more accounts than bad timing ever could. Then there is the problem of emotion after success. A person wins a few times and suddenly feels unstoppable. Confidence begins to grow too quickly. Small victories convince him that he finally understands everything. He becomes careless without even noticing. What once felt risky now feels normal. He stops respecting uncertainty, and this is often where trouble quietly begins, but the other side is just as dangerous. After disappointment, many people become emotional in ways they fail to recognize. Instead of slowing down, they speed up. They feel the need to recover immediately. One loss turns into frustration. Frustration turns into rushed decisions, and rushed decisions usually create deeper problems. A person begins acting from emotion rather than patience. Another mistake people make is becoming attached to their opinions. They stop looking at reality and begin defending their choices instead. It becomes personal. Admitting a mistake suddenly feels painful, almost like admitting weakness. So they hold on, hoping time will rescue them. But reality does not change simply because someone wishes hard enough. Fear also quietly controls many decisions. Some people become so afraid of failure that they hesitate every time an opportunity appears. They doubt themselves, overthink simple choices, and end up watching life move without them. Fear can be just as damaging as carelessness. The strongest people I have known were not fearless, perfect, or always right. They simply learned how to remain calm when emotions tried to take control. They understood that every difficult moment carries a choice. You can react without thinking, or you can pause long enough to protect yourself from becoming your own biggest enemy. Because in the end, most battles are not against the market. They are against human nature itself. And once a man understands that truth, he begins asking a better question. Not how can I always be right, but rather, how can I stay standing long enough to succeed? That question changes everything because survival is what gives a person another chance. Without it, even talent becomes useless. The first thing a wise trader learns is to stop risking so much that one bad moment destroys his peace of mind. There is no prize for carrying unnecessary pressure. When too much is placed on one decision, fear quietly enters the room. A person begins watching every movement with anxiety. He loses patience. Small changes suddenly feel enormous because too much is at stake. Clear thinking disappears when emotions grow too loud. Another lesson worth learning is knowing when to step aside. There is strength in admitting something is not working. Yet many people see this as weakness. They continue pushing simply because they already invested time, energy, or pride into the situation. But protecting yourself is never weakness. Sometimes the smartest decision a person can make is accepting discomfort early instead of waiting for greater pain later. Then there is patience, a quality most people admire but very few practice. The strongest traders are often the quietest ones. They are not constantly chasing movement or excitement. They understand that not every moment deserves action. Sometimes waiting is the work. Sometimes discipline means doing nothing at all until the right moment arrives. It is also important to stop chasing quantity and begin respecting quality. Many traders believe more effort means more success, so they rush into one decision after another. But constant action often leads to careless mistakes. A thoughtful decision made calmly will always beat 10 emotional ones made in a hurry. Most importantly, protect what allows you to continue. Money can return. Confidence can return. Opportunities never disappear for long. But if a person burns himself out emotionally, mentally, or financially, recovery becomes far harder than necessary. The market rewards people who can endure, not the loudest person, not the most emotional one. The person who survives long enough to learn usually becomes stronger than the person who tried to rush success. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Lasting success belongs to those who value protection just as much as progress. And when a person finally understands that, something begins to change. He no longer wakes up chasing quick success or trying to prove himself every single day. He begins to move with more patience, more calm, more awareness. He stops treating every moment like a battle that must be won and starts understanding that success is often built through quiet discipline repeated over time. Many people enter the market believing the goal is to be right all the time. But life has a way of humbling anyone who thinks certainty belongs to them. No man, no matter how experienced, escapes mistakes. The difference is found in how people respond to those difficult moments. Some grow bitter, others grow wiser. The truth is, lasting success rarely belongs to the smartest person in the room. It often belongs to the one who remains steady when emotions begin pulling others in every direction. The person who accepts uncomfortable truths early usually avoids painful consequences later. You do not need perfect timing. You do not need endless confidence. And you certainly do not need to win every time. What you need is enough patience to stay grounded when excitement tries to rush you, and enough honesty to admit when something is no longer working, because opportunities never truly disappear. New chances always arrive for those who remain prepared enough to recognize them. But only the person who protects himself earns the chance to see tomorrow. So before you make another decision, ask yourself something honestly. Are you acting with patience and discipline, or are you simply hoping things will somehow work out in your favor? The answer to that question may explain far more about your results than any strategy ever could.